Alrighty, this Alekhine game pretty closely follows the preparation that I have for this particular line. It's 3 knight c3, and then of course dc3 and bc3 are both covered in the course. But bc3, you want to play d5. Against dc3, you want to go knight c6 to pressure the pawn, and then d6. So you don't want to confuse those things. And I remember before I wrote the book, I would confuse them all the time because I so rarely face this variation. And the idea with bc3 is after d5, you actually get a French-style position with c5 here. And that's why you want d5. He's got the extra protection, but we're chipping away. So f4, knight c6. Knight f3, all things going according to plan. Bishop g4, got our bishop outside of the chain before we close it. Now queen c7. Here, d takes c5, followed by g5 is very interesting as a consideration. But more than likely, instead of queen c7 here, queen a5 looks playable, because if rook takes, I have c takes, and this is very annoying. But I don't typically consider these types of sharp options that require calculation in blitz games, because you would have to use a third of your total time just to look at this line. Queen c7, you stick with the structure, stick with the overall plan. Bishop d3. And it's hard for me to consider the engine's first choice here, which is c4. Because it's got pros and cons. It shuts down the position, but at the same time, I mean, this is messy. I'll be looking to castle queenside as the king side's blowing up. The action of the game is going to be happening over there while I'm going to be safe. But being dynamic and being a rapid game, or blitz game rather, let's keep it going. Let's keep it nasty. So we take, and this is the first critical position. I didn't mind giving up the bishop pair because my light square bishop didn't exactly have a future. And in this pawn structure, he's typically on c8 where he's not doing much. So we have a very much improved French. So what's best? Well, making threats is always good. Bishop c3. You pin me. And I say, well, I would like for you to go away. Now, whose bishop's better? I have a good bishop, he has a bad bishop. My bishop hit the pawns that are locked in the center. His bishop only defends. So if I can make it to the promised land of an endgame, yes, absolutely yes. My opponent, sensing this and the danger in the position, plays f5. And because I want some flexibility, I go b5. White should attempt queen g4, and after g6, it's a game. We get something similar in a few moves. But rook hd1 gives me some time where the engine likes taking on f5. I personally did not consider this, but it's safe. But I wanted to maintain the pawn structure so the d-pawn would be defended. But potentially just an error in logic for me, because it's more important to keep the king safe and not have to worry about tactical threats on the dark squares. But after rook d1, I played rook c8 and ended up getting isolated pawn anyway, so no real logic to my play with why I didn't just take on f5. Then when he takes, notice the bishop. The advantage is starting to get magnified. Look at all my pawns agreeing with my bishop. What is this bishop doing in the position? Nada. So what we do, we trade a set, and then we start looking to improve. Bishop b4, bishop b7, rook c3. How are you going to defend everything? All right, you cover the a3 square. Let's just get some space, shall we? Rook g3. And we've got all day here. a4. It's just monstrous. Just kicking him around. Coming back. And finally, the house falls down with bishop h4. But it's really hard to play anything here. Rook e2. I'm going to go rook c4. And on bishop e3, bishop h4 anyway. And it's getting tough. I mean, king g7, g4, g5, rook g2, king f7. I mean, I can even walk my boy all the way up here and eventually get him to the c4 square. White's in paralysis here, needing to defend weaknesses. It's a torture position. My favorite. So, a relatively decent Alekhine game finally graces us in this series. And I kind of like it because I'm just analyzing it no matter what I chose for myself. So hopefully we're getting some instructive ideas for you guys as well as we are going through these random blitz games. And if you're enjoying the series, please take the time to hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, as it definitely helps a lot with YouTube these days. Thanks.